Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round screening series, Film Independent Presents. I'm so happy you joined us here this morning to welcome the cast and crew of The Queen's Gambit. First off, I'd like to thank some of our supporters. Our lead sponsor, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The HFPA has been an ardent supporter of this program and of Film Independent for many years, and we are so grateful for their support, especially right now. Also to our media partner, the Los Angeles Times, and to our screening partner, Vision Media. We have a guest moderator today, Janelle Riley. She is the Deputy Awards and Features Editor at Variety, and I will let her take it from here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian. I know that title is a mouthful. I appreciate you trying. I can't even say it right. As he told you, my name is Janelle Riley. Thank you for joining us for this Film Independent Zoom Live with the cast and creatives behind Netflix's critically acclaimed limited series, The Queen's Gambit. If you're anything like me, you have been watching the show probably every day the last week, over and over again. I want to start by introducing today's guests. We'll start with Bill Horberg, who is the executive producer of the series. We also have joining us Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays the lead Elizabeth Harmon. We have actor Bill Camp, who plays Mr. Scheibel. Actress Moses Ingram, who plays Jolene. And also, we have a special guest. We have actress Marielle Heller, who plays Alma Wheatley, and a small guest on her lap. That is amazing. Thank you all so much for being here. Whenever I have people as accomplished as you all are, I actually like to go back to the beginning and ask, what was your first job in this business? The first time you felt you could call yourself an actor, call yourself a producer? Marielle, for you, I know you're a hugely successful director who's now acting as well. You're a complete overachiever. I'm sort of curious what your first job in this business was.
I originally only thought I was going to be an actor. I started as an actor and went to theater school and mostly worked in theater, and only really started directing and writing out of frustration and out of feeling that I wasn't getting to be creative enough or getting to do enough cool parts that felt three-dimensional and like they were really juicy. So I hadn't acted in 10 years until this series. So this is sort of a return to my roots, and it was really scary for all of those reasons.
Oh, wow. And you're amazing, I just have to say. You're everybody in this cast is fantastic. Bill Camp, I'd be curious to hear for you. You have such a storied career. What was your first professional job in the business?
My first professional job was I played the boy in Waiting for Godot when I was 10.
No way.
The first job I got out of school was here in New York in the park. Joseph Papp gave me a job, Shakespeare in the park in Central Park, and that was really, I was humbled by. I was extremely excited that I was getting paid to actually, do it, and it was it couldn't have, been more exciting and fun and crazy. And so I felt like, I sort of feel this way every job I get, though. It's like, it's that old thing. It's like, this could be the last one. So every job I'm still trying to like, I experience that feeling of like, oh, I guess I'm pretty good at this. I guess I can get a job. Like I can make a living at this. I get to do what I love. And so there's nothing greater, but I guess it was that job.
Well, the good news is your wife is an incredible actress too. So if it stops for you,
Yeah,
you
right.
can rely on her. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anya, what about for you?
My first ever day on set, it was a movie called Vampire Academy, and I played theater girl, which means that I got dragged in, covered in bite marks, and basically like passed around to the vampires in that room. And I just remember going back to my trailer that day and just thinking, this is the most fun I have ever had. Like, I never want to stop doing this. Please let me do this forever. And then they cut me out of the movie and I was like, that's okay. I'm going to keep going. But my first like real job was The Witch. And that happened pretty soon after that. And that was, I mean, I am currently working with the same group of people, and it feels like home. It is home, and I'm so grateful for that experience and to be doing it again.
Looks like we might have lost Moses, but I'm sure she'll join in soon. Bill H., what about for you?
I started in the business in exhibition. I don't know if that makes me an exhibitionist,
Really?
but I opened a movie theater in Chicago where I grew up with a high school buddy of mine, and it was very funny. It had been the Playboy Theater in the '70s, so it actually had like bunny logo carpeting and a kind of disco brothel style. But we were showing old movies, you know, Hitchcock and Werner Herzog and you know, kind of classics and foreign films. So that was how I kind of got the bug, programming films and making popcorn and chasing rats. That was basically my job.
And look where you are now. I actually want to start at the beginning of The Queen's Gambit with you because I know this series is based on the book of the same name by Walter Tevis. How did you come across this story? Can you talk about the process of adapting it into a limited series with the great Scott Frank and Alan Scott? And how did you know you could make chess so sexy?
Well, there's definitely an origin story, and all praise to my partner, Alan Scott. He's a wonderful screenwriter and a prolific producer. He was the one who optioned the book back in the '80s. He actually bought the rights to the book outright and almost got it made on several different occasions with different actors and directors. Bernardo Bertolucci at one time was going to direct a version of The Queen's Gambit. Young Molly Ringwald was going to star in it. So there's a lot of history there. And I met Alan, funnily enough, on one of the only other things I've done as a television series was a show called Fallen Angels that was made for Showtime back in the early '90s. And Alan Scott wrote one of the episodes, and Scott Frank wrote one of the episodes. And Scott and I were buddies when we first met. We just had a real instant connection. I was a junior executive at Paramount, and he was a young writer in the writers building there. And we worked on the movie Dead Again together, you know, that Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson made. So a lot of history. I got involved probably about 20 years ago. I read the book because Michael Ondaatje, the writer of The English Patient, told me this was like one of his favorite books, and he read it every couple of years as like a touchstone as an author. He just admired the craft of it so much. And I started chasing down the rights, and lo and behold, my friend Alan Scott turned out to have the rights. And I called them and, you know, said, would there be any chance of co-parenting with you and, you know, seeing if we could join forces and find a way to get this made. And he graciously welcomed me on. And Scott was one of the people that I thought of, that I just had a sense that he would really dig this material. And he read it and loved it. And we spent a little bit of time trying to get it made as a feature film. But it was pretty uphill, you know, it wasn't perceived as commercial enough. And also because of the peripatetic nature of the story and all the disparate countries and locations, it wasn't an easy film to make, you know, cheaply. So we gave up at a certain point. And it was really Scott making Godless for Netflix that was a total game changer. You know, the market almost had to catch up to us in terms of streaming and the ability to tell these long form stories. And in the wake of Godless, you know, they were looking to continue the relationship with Scott. And he called me and said, you know, whatever happened to Queen's Gambit, is it still around? I think the way to actually do it now is to expand it and really let it live and breathe as a character piece. And so we took it to Netflix with Alan, and they said yes.
Wow. And in a way, I'm glad it took that long because you have the perfect cast. I'm guessing Anya was like, you know, probably 2 years old when this book first came out. But how did the script find its way to you, and what attracted you specifically to the role of Beth? aside from the amazing costumes?
There was no script when I signed on. I signed on the book alone. The book and Scott, that was basically it. I was preparing. I already knew that 2019 was going to be a busy year because I had signed up to do 2 movies back to back. And then I heard that Scott Frank wanted to meet me and he wanted to talk about this book. And I'm not kidding, I finished the book in about an hour and a half, and then I ran to meet Scott, like physically ran to that meeting. I was so overwhelmed and excited by the character, and I had all of these ideas, and I just ran into the restaurant and I was like, she has to be a redhead and it's not all about chess. He was like, yes, I agree, I concur, sit down, let's eat something. And I'm Scott, by the way, nice to meet you. Yeah, I fell in love with her. I really connected with her feeling of being isolated and being separate, but desperately wanting to find an in, and then having this magical world open up that gave her a sense of who she was. Yeah, I just fell in love with her.
Marielle, you mentioned that you hadn't acted in 10 years when this found its way to you. What was it specifically about this script that made you want to return?
For me, it was also Scott. You know, Scott and I are friends, really, we're director friends. And on a lark, I had done a really small part in his movie, A Walk Among the Tombstones, which got cut out, but a day player just for fun, even though I really haven't been acting in a long time. And when I did that, he kind of looked at me and went, oh, I didn't realize you're actually an actor. Okay, I'm gonna make you act for me one day. It became a threat. I'm nursing while I talk, excuse me. But so it became more of a threat from him. And then when this came along, there was another actress who was supposed to play Alma. And when she fell out, he came to me and said, I want you to play this part. And I was like, what are you talking about? Netflix will never let you hire me for this part. I haven't acted in 10 years. They have nothing to even look at. And he was like, oh, they already said yes. And so it was sort of this like challenge where I had to decide if I was gonna say yes to something that sounded kind of crazy and fun and out of my comfort zone right now. And I don't know how he knew I could do it, but he just had a real sense of it.
Wow, that's fantastic. Bill Camp, what about for you?
Scott, the story, the book, like Anya said, he's such a mysterious guy, Scheibel, that I was attracted. You know, he just drew me to him. I'm not really sure why, but sometimes there are characters that present themselves, and you sort of instinctively, or I kind of instinctively feel like, oh, this individual could unfold into something kind of interesting. And I didn't know what that would be, but I mean, to me, he was very clearly defined in his simplicity, and yet there was some depth. I didn't know what it was or where it came from or what, but also the act of being of service to this young woman by opening a door, you know, and sort of responding to her curiosity. Really, I thought was a nice part of the mosaic to be a part of, you know.
I'm going to assume everyone has seen the show because everyone has seen the show, but also you're here. So if I can get a little bit spoilery, it's so fascinating to me in the final episode when we find that Mr. Scheibel has been following her career and has all these clippings and photos. And yeah, exactly. Like you're just the hardest cry I've ever had. And I was thinking in some ways you do your best acting, not even on screen, because you built this character so much that our hearts break in that moment.
Wow, Janelle, what an amazing compliment. I really like
I've had a lot of
Glad you took it as a compliment.
I've had a lot of
It's
people asking why on earth did Beth not pay Mr. Scheibel back, and a lot of people are mad at me, and I'm like, I didn't write it. I'm sorry.
I know.
assumed she did until she said she hadn't. I was shocked.
No, my wife actually pointed that out. Once you open, once that check, once Marielle's holding that check, or it's like, well, she's going to send you the money. She's going to pay you back, right? She does, right? Yeah, so I think
actually,
there's
yeah.
a he was such a sort of dark kind of like uh you know, you don't know a guy that spends all his time in the basement of an orphanage, who knows who that person is or why they're there or what, what is the history there.
They're both lonely.
And yet he's so amazingly generous, and yet not in a kind of like I'm being generous with some sort of string attached.
Yeah.
There's nothing attached. It's unconditional what he gives her. And so I think that was something that, I don't know, and Scott.
It's kind of
Yeah.
amazing too that Anya and Bill, you guys didn't really have any scenes together yet. I feel like because we're so attached to young Beth as you, it feels like you guys had this huge history, but did you even have any scenes together? Not really.
We
Yeah.
didn't really, yeah, I got
You
to,
looked at me out the window of the
Yeah.
car.
yeah,
We met that day.
we met, I got to come into the orphanage and see a couple of my memories, which was nice.
Right. The same day I did. Yeah.
You said that you were there. Yeah.
And Moses, welcome back. I am so in love with Jolene. I mean, she really gets to speak her mind. She's such a fun character. How did this part find its way to you, and what was the process of sort of landing that role?
I auditioned, just came in my email, just like everything else. And I just had my sides, but it was just easy language that sort of just fit in your mouth without doing much. And I went in the room, and a couple weeks later, Scott wanted to Skype, and we chatted, and he was really passionate about it, and he was like, wow, you look really young. You could do young Jolene too. And I was like, really? He was like, I think so. He was like, let me talk to some people. And then not long after that, I found out I booked it and was on my way to Berlin.
And you're fairly fresh out of school, is what I understand. This isn't
Yeah.
your first TV job, is it?
This is my first TV job, yes. So it's
Wow.
amazing to be a part of this one that is like so, amazing. It's great.
Yeah, that's incredible. And especially to be surrounded by so much talent. Was it ever intimidating?
No, I felt very welcomed. Everyone was super patient and generous and kind. A great place to learn off the bat. It was really great.
I want to talk about the amazing look of the show, especially the costumes, which Anya, I want your whole wardrobe. And I just saw Netflix actually launched a virtual costume design exhibit today with the Brooklyn Museum. It's the Queen's Gambit and the Crown. I don't want to get on a plane, but I really want to go to New York and see that. Bill H., can you sort of talk about creating the look of the show, and for the actors, how did these costumes and these settings inform your characters?
Well, it's a bit improbable, and about 90% of this show was made in Berlin. So we shot Berlin for Las Vegas, Berlin for Mexico City, Berlin for Kentucky, Berlin for New York. In fact, there's not a single moment of the show, as you know, that takes place in Berlin. But it was really driven by this genius production designer, Uli Hanisch, who's really one of the top, people in film in Europe. I'd had the pleasure of working with him maybe 20 years ago with German director Tom Tykwer on a film. And Scott was looking for somebody to design the show. And we both kind of immediately said, oh, Babylon Berlin. That was just such an incredible period look where it really looked lived in and not, sometimes period things look like they're in a glass bubble, and preserved in amber. So he said, who designed that? And I said, well, I know the guy, Uli, he's an old friend. Let me send him the book. And they Skyped, and Scott immediately fell in love with him. And so originally we were just going over to Berlin to meet Uli. And I thought, well, we could probably do Paris and Moscow there. We got to go somewhere in Europe. And then we got over there, and Uli started taking us around, And because the whole city was built, after the war, it just had an incredible variety of period appropriate architecture. And then we literally like walked into a building and went, this could be a Vegas casino. It's kind of amazing. It looks like Bobby Darin should be singing here or something. And it just kept going like that. And I thought, well, maybe we'll do half the show here. And it was like a pool table, the balls just all slid down to the other side. And, we found the high school there. So the look, his whole team, it was his art director, his prop team, his set decorators. We just inherited a family really, which was beautiful because they all had worked together and had a lot of history together. And then Gabrielle Binder, who was the costume designer, also brilliant woman. She had done The Lives of Others, that Oscar-winning German film that Florian von Henkel.
Yeah, it's a long last name.
Yeah. So we met her over there and just loved her. And she'd done a lot of German work, but hadn't really worked on a kind of international project of scale. And man, she just knocked it out of the park. I mean, I love that there's a museum show happening of her work in this. It just seems so fitting. Excuse the pun.
Anya, I don't know if you can tell us, but did you keep any of the costumes? Because I would have.
I was very lucky actually. So because we get to see Beth grow up, I was afforded the wonderful luxury and opportunity to really work with Gabrielle. Like we went in deep together and I was like, okay, then she sees this movie. So I'm really thinking this kind of outfit. And she would come out and be like, but let's make it green. And I was like, yes. So it was a wonderful collaborative experience. And at the end, because they're all thrift shop clothes, she goes, you picked them, like take them home. But now they're in a museum in Brooklyn. So I'm going to have to wait. But it's
But you'll
good.
get them back?
I think so. I hope so.
Wow.
They are so beautiful, and it was so helpful as a way of charting where we were in the story, because there were some days where, because of our locations, we were shooting 15-year-old Beth, 19-year-old Beth, 21-year-old Beth, and it really does it sounds obvious, but changing the wig and then putting on the different clothes, it immediately set my brain for, this is how you walk, this is how you intonate your speech, this is what you're in now. So I'm massively grateful for all of it.
Yeah, when Jolene shows up, in the final episode, like her outfit and her hair and everything about her says so much about that character. Moses, it's actually funny that you mentioned playing both young and older Jolene. I didn't realize at first it was the same actress.
I've been getting so many DMs of different people saying different things like, I can't find the younger actress. I'm like, it's me. It's also me.
Like, I'm that good.
I'm both Jolene's.
That's amazing. I actually want to talk about that because the show was #1 on Netflix, and people have responded to it. It's so strongly. Bill, I know you were saying before we started that you've never seen a response like this. Why do you think people have responded so strongly to this show and these characters?
Is that for me? It's one of those things, we certainly knew we had made something of quality, and, we were blessed with these incredible actors. And we were supported by the studio, and, it was a lot of work to hone it and get it to all play and get the visual effects working and all of that. And so we were proud of it, but, I think we're all kind of pinch me, I must be dreaming, in terms of just how universally it's been accepted. It just came out last Friday, and it's been one of those kind of viral feelings where just people discover it, and word of mouth. I mean, you can't beat word of mouth. It's people telling other people, like, you gotta see this. And it just seems like it somehow came at the right time. It clearly struck a nerve for people. This has been one of the most profoundly upside down years probably in human history in some way. And I think, to walk in Beth Harmon's shoes and experience the journey that she takes, and the span of years and the people she meets, and to see, her talent, and to see her kind of overcoming all the challenges she has, it just seems like it was a story that people needed right now.
Anyone else have any theories?
No,
Uh,
made me cry, Bill.
What's
Go
that?
on,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead, Anya.
No, I literally just said that nearly made me cry. That was my contribution. Anyway, after you.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add to that, but I think that there's a lot of things, like thinking that it's not just a certain age group or a demographic that's attracted to it because of whatever reason. It seems to be like covering the whole landscape. And I would imagine there's lots of reasons, one being the collective kind of chaos of this last 8-9 months, and the need for, like you said, Bill, the timing is perfect, and it's such a it's interesting. My son is studying the hero myth right now, and I have to say that there are these parallels where Beth is kind of a hero, or is absolutely a hero, and in the way that she kind of takes on this quest with this special gift through, and the fact that she actually overcomes them, and which is human though. And it's really just the uplifting nature of the kind of that we get in touch with the strong good parts of our humanity after suffering. I think it's there's a lot of stuff that in this, as well as just like Bill, you were saying, the production value is insane. It's just so incredible, and I think it transports people in a way as well, and it gets an older generation as well in touch with a time that they are looking back on. And then there's the curiosity of, for younger people, and the way that also the chess scenes are shot, I think, are just the tension and what Anya's doing and every one of her opponents. And it's like, that's not that easy to do, to shoot chess scenes where you have tension, and you have like, my wife and I were literally like leaning into the screen, because it was like, what's good, it's not that easy to achieve that. And it's just brilliant, it's really, and it's collective.
I mean, it's funny, we were so terrified about the chess games. I think the terror is what drove so much work and attention around them that allowed it to work.
And Bruce was there to oversee it as well, Bruce Pandolfini.
And Stephen Meisner, the cinematographer, just found ways to film the chess that were so unique for each game. They each have their own kind of vocabulary and way of filming, and that's really hard to do. I was scared for you guys. I was like, how are they going to make this interesting? and it blew my mind, because even if you don't like chess, you can get so invested in the games.
I'm curious about the chess, actually, and actually we have a question from David Polson. Wants to let Anya know that he worked in the production office of The New Mutants. He's saying hi. You're incredible in this show. What was the process for being so convincingly adept at playing chess in the film, or are you in fact a grandmaster?
No, I wish. I had to have a theoretical understanding of chess, because I could in no good consciousness, like just rock up and pretend that I understood what I was doing, because, you know, chess means a lot to the people that care about it. So I had to understand it. But applying that theoretical knowledge to an 8-hour game is a very different story. So the way that we ended up shooting it was I developed with like my own way of moving the pieces that to me said something about who Beth was. And then I would learn each game 5 minutes before we did it. And that was the only way of like, just how many games did we have? Like how many, 200, like it was a lot. So the only way of doing it was just 5 minutes before each game. I had to learn it and then execute.
Did you have any experience, either you or Bill Camp, did you have any experience with chess before this game? Like even a casual player?
I'd never played. But
Wow.
But I feel so lucky that I mean, at least my introduction came from people who were masters of the game. Like my appreciation and my respect and my love for this game, like I play now. And that was created by the people who I met who loved it so much.
Bill, you played before. Are you better now or about the same?
Maybe a little better. I can open better. I can open better now. But Bruce taught me. I had lessons with Bruce. He lives in New York as well, and so I was able to go and sit with him, and we would actually just have mostly conversations that were awesome, and he would talk to me about the nature of the game and the history of the game, and I would just pepper him with questions. But yeah, it was the same deal. We had to learn the same, you know, Isla and I had to learn the same, you know, the moves and the game, the ultimate, you know, outcome of the game and why we were getting there and how we'd get there when we were shooting. But yeah, now I can beat my son, my 14-year-old son. So yeah.
We have a question from Blanca. I guess this is for Anya and Marielle. This show deals with topics like mental illness and addiction, and it was treated with a very beautiful sensitivity. How did you approach this in your acting?
Ooh,
I think,
wanna go?
sure. I mean, I think the thing about being inside a character is that you can't judge them. So if they're experiencing something, oh, sorry, I have another visitor joining me. Do you want to say hi? In a little bit. I'm almost done.
No, right now.
Sorry. It's just like, but you kind of can't address, oh, there's a naked child behind me. I'll just do this to cover him up.
Right now.
I guess you just, I'm not going to answer right now. I'll let Andrew go first.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Sure.
Mari, go ahead. Okay, no, okay, cool.
Yeah.
A conversation that Scott and I had very early on was about, so there's a lot of chess in this movie, or in this series, sorry, and there's a lot of substance abuse, and 7 hours of one-note chess and 7 hours of one-note substance abuse is not going to be interesting to watch. It's also massively inconsiderate to the people who struggle with substance abuse. And at least for like the solo substance abuse scenes, it was very important to us that you understood the motivation for each one. So if somebody's using, they're using for a reason. What is the reason that somebody is using it, or that Beth is using in this scene? Is she drinking to escape? Is she taking the pills because she doesn't think that she can win without them? Is she punishing herself? Is it a celebration? Is she very lonely? And yeah, it felt important to make them each different without being bombastic, because I think that there's a kind of culture of making drug abuse and alcohol abuse seem like very rock and roll and massive, and it's actually a lot more heartbreaking, the reality, which is just quieter. I think it's a quieter way of hurting yourself.
I agree. For me, now that I can slightly answer, it was much more about clicking into Alma's pain and what was driving her pain. And she was a character who was so locked in a loveless marriage and had never been able to fulfill any of her kind of bigger dreams for her life. And that was so heartbreaking for me to see a character like that who's sort of a victim of her era and never really got to have the life that she could have had as a pianist or as a mother. So rather than kind of thinking about the effect, which is the abuse of alcohol and drugs, but it was much more about thinking about what was the cause, what was the thing that was causing the pain to begin with, and clicking into that.
I just have to say too, it's so lovely to see Alma Wheatley getting to enjoy raising her kids while this is going on. I
Yes.
love the juxtaposition. But
Pretty
those
funny.
are, it's actually wonderful. Those are really hard, challenging scenes, and I'm curious as actors if they ever affected you personally. Do you sort of take your work home with you at the end of the day? Can it be hard to be in that headspace?
Oh,
Was it for you, Anya?
yes and no. It was I showed up to Berlin exhausted, or to Canada, sorry. We had a week in Canada and I showed up completely spent, having just shot these 2 other movies, and that just left me with zero energy to create a barrier and to have an understanding of this is that person and this is you. I'm not method, but it was difficult to snap out of it. And returning to Henry Clay when Beth is like, the makeup, and she's been binging for a couple of days, and that was tough. That hurt. It hurt in a good way. And actually, I'm so proud of the scene, because I think I can feel myself bleed a little bit in it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that was the right way it was supposed to be.
For me, as you see, I'm a mom and I have a lot of distractions, so I can't take my work home with me. I have to let it go the moment I get home. There's just like no way.
Anya and Moses, we have a question. This series is set in the 60s, and yet the journey of your characters feels so modern. Was it challenging to make these characters feel like modern women, even though the text and the setting are decades old?
Want to go, Moses?
Yeah. I mean, I think for Jolene, unfortunately, the world is not very different than it was then, So like trying to figure out what your lane is, I think is very much the plight of the day, in a sense. What about for you?
One of the things that I loved about Beth was that she seemed just outside of society enough to be genuinely baffled when people brought up her gender, and genuinely baffled when, it's one of my favorite things about the show. Like, she sort of represents an ideal that we're striving for, where she's a rare 50s, 60s woman who was born without the book of you're a girl. This is what you're allowed to want. This is what you're allowed to speak like. This is what you're allowed to do with your life. And she just wasn't born with it. And so she kind of goes about her life thinking, I deserve anything that I work for. And I thought that was really beautiful. And yeah, hopefully we're working towards that.
We have a question for Bill Camp. Wants to know what it was like playing such a reserved character.
Massively enjoyable.
Really?
Really? No, because it's like a gift to play somebody, for me at least, that reserved, because then it requires me to think as opposed to show. Do you know that I don't feel the burden to have to indicate anything that's going on in terms of what I want the observer to see. It's on me to actually think that stuff. And then the great challenge is, can I communicate that and transmit that in some way? So, it was just a, it's a great opportunity, to have somebody like that. The reservation is, there are many reasons why he is reserved, but it makes me think, Mari and Anya are talking about motives and stuff. And so every action or move that he had, either on the table or getting up and leaving, or the way he was looking at, young Beth, it was all, what are those motives? Why is, especially when he's so close to the cuff, and so quiet in a way. But it also, I don't know.
You're
It was
so
great.
wonderful
It was
with your
really,
young scene
it was really
partner.
fun. That's all I
Yeah.
can say. It was really fun. It was really fun. It's great.
Well, we have a question for Bill Horberg from Carlos. Wants to know, what guidance did you give the composer Carlos Rivera? The score does a great job of building the emotion and tension without upstaging the fabulous acting.
Well, Scott had a great team. You mentioned Stephen Meisler, his cinematographer. We got to give props to his editor, Michelle Tesoro, who just did a brilliant job, especially putting those chess games and sequences together. And another one of his, longtime collaborators is Carlos Rafael Rivera. He did the music for Godless, for the pilot Scott shot Hoke. And that was a lot of fun for me. I'm a music school dropout, first and foremost. And I always love when a director and a composer have a pre-existing relationship. I had that with Anthony Minghella, Gabriel Yared. A lot of the economic factors of filmmaking often lead the music to come on at the end, like spray painted onto a car coming off the assembly line. But when the composer's there from the writing and the scripting and sharing ideas and, sending in little sketches and ditties, and Carlos is one of those guys who can play anything. He's a multi-instrumentalist. And so early on, they had decided the piano, was going to be the voice instrument of the score, and he was sending sketches, and then Scott could share some of those themes with the actors. So it all is beautiful when the score can organically grow with the whole creative process of telling the story, and it's just serving the story in a deeper way. And the response to the score has been tremendous. Deservedly so. All the richness and the thinking of how certain things get brought back in terms of, it's played a certain way when it's related to an imaginary game on the ceiling, and then it returns kind of in more of a real world vernacular, and it's got orchestral strings, and it's all very mapped out and intentional.
It's such a great show, and I'm glad the weekend is here, because now we can all go watch it again, binge it this weekend. I want to thank you all for watching at home, and thank the panelists so much for joining us today. And again, congratulations on a great series.